The lead hegemony representative shifted uncomfortably. The recent internal fractures in their government were no secret. With each world that broke away, their grip on power weakened. As Neri concluded her opening address, representatives from various worlds began their reports. The Talaxians described breakthroughs in sustainable energy made possible by collaboration with human scientists. The Viridian Union announced new educational exchanges among member worlds. Even the Draxians, traditionally the hegemony's military enforcers, presented plans for converting battle cruisers into exploration vessels. During a brief recess, Neri found herself face to face with Dai, the Draxian warrior who had once been chosen to help execute her. His massive form still intimidated, but his posture was different now, less aggressive, more thoughtful. "Ambassador Neri," he said, his voice a low rumble, "I owe you an apology." "You were following orders," Neri replied carefully. "I was allowing others to think for me," Dai corrected. "The humans' mercy in the arena. It made many of us question what we had been taught." He gestured to the other Draxians in his delegation. "We are learning to be more than weapons." Across the chamber, Ju was deep in conversation with representatives from 3 different worlds, her hands moving animatedly as she explained something. Whatever she was describing had them all leaning forward with interest. "She is remarkable, your human friend," Dai observed. "All humans are, in their way," Neri said. "The hegemony feared them because they couldn't control them. They never realized that working with them would be more beneficial than trying to subjugate them." When the session resumed, Neri took her seat beside the other Zephyrian delegates. Her brother Quan, now serving as science minister, squeezed her hand briefly, a gesture of pride. "Did you ever imagine this?" he whispered as the proceedings continued. Neri watched as species that had been enemies for centuries now collaborated on solving common problems. She saw the hegemony representatives gradually becoming more engaged, realizing perhaps that adaptation was their only path forward. "No," she answered honestly, "but that's what humans taught me, to imagine better possibilities." As the day's session concluded, representatives mingled freely, continuing discussions that would have been impossible under the old order. Neri found herself standing with Ju at one of the observation windows, looking out at Earth and the stars beyond. "In human history," Ju said quietly, "there's a saying that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." "Do you believe that?" Neri asked. "I believe it doesn't bend on its own," Ju replied. "People have to do the bending. People willing to stand up when it matters." Neri's scales shimmered with emotion as she thought about how far they had come. From a condemned prisoner to a founding ambassador of a new galactic alliance. From isolated species under hegemony control to partners building a shared future. "One small act of conscience," she murmured, remembering the warning she had sent that started everything. "That's always how change begins," Ju said with a smile. "One person deciding that injustice will not happen on their watch." Outside the window, a ship departed the station, its lights forming a bright trail against the darkness of space. It carried delegates back to their homeworlds, bearing news of new agreements, new possibilities, new hope. The new alliance was still young and fragile in many ways, but it grew stronger each day, built on the simple revolutionary idea that different did not mean lesser, that cooperation yielded more than domination ever could. And it had all begun because one person had refused to stay silent while others suffered, and another had refused to let her die for that choice. Hana stirred in her sleep, the blue markings on her temples glowing faintly in the dark vehicle. Jin gently touched them, remembering how Nera's markings would glow when she was emotional or using what she called her natural abilities. What was Hana capable of? What dangers awaited her because of her mixed heritage? Jin didn't know, but he was determined to protect her at all costs. He started the transport again, heading north toward the green dot on the map. Whatever secrets Nera had kept, whatever enemies she had fled, they were now his problems too. And somewhere out there, Nera was facing these enemies alone to keep them away from her family. "I'll find you," Jin whispered to the night sky. and I'll keep her safe. I promise. As they drove away, Jin didn't notice the small drone tracking them from high above. Its sensors focused on the unique energy signature coming from Hana. The hunt had only just begun. 3 days had passed since Jin and Hana fled their home. They now stayed in a small cabin deep in the northern forest, following the green dot on Nera's map device. The cabin belonged to no one, dusty and abandoned for years, but it had power and clean water, enough for them to hide while Jin figured out their next move. Hana played on the floor with some blocks Jin had packed, stacking them higher than seemed possible for a 2-year-old. Jin watched her with growing concern. Each day, she seemed to do something new, something beyond what a human child should be able to do. Tower tall, Hana said proudly, pointing to her creation that now reached above her head. Yes, very tall, Jin replied, wondering if her quick development was normal for her mother's species. There was so much about Nera he didn't know. A soft beeping came from the map device. The screen flashed, showing a new signal approaching their location. Jin grabbed his blaster from the table, an old military weapon he'd kept hidden for years, and moved to the window. A sleek silver vehicle glided through the trees, barely making the sound. It stopped about 50 meters from the cabin. Jin aimed his weapon, finger on the trigger. The door of the vehicle opened, and a figure stepped out. It looked similar to Nera, the same silver-blue skin with markings, though this one appeared male. He wore a simple dark uniform and carried no visible weapons. Jin Reynolds, the figure called out. I am Ta. I was sent by Nera to help you. Jin didn't move from his position. Prove it. Ta held up a blue crystal identical to the one Nera had left in the package. She gave me this as proof. The crystal pairs are linked. They can only be given willingly. Jin felt the weight of the matching crystal in his pocket. Nara had once told him such crystals were precious among her people, used only to mark the deepest bonds. Stay where you are, Jin ordered, grabbing Hana and moving her to the back room before stepping outside, blaster still raised. Tai remained still, his large eyes, so like Nera's, watching Jin calmly. Your daughter is in danger. So does all of humanity if the wrong people find her. Who are you? Who is Nera really? Tai's expression changed slightly. She didn't tell you everything, did she? I warned her that was a mistake. He sighed. I am Ta, Chief Science Advisor to the Royal House of Lumen. Nara was Princess Neralima, third daughter of Emperor Suk, ruler of the Lumen Empire. Jin lowered his weapon slightly, stunned. Princess. Empire. What are you talking about? The Lumen control 12 star systems. We have watched Earth for centuries but maintained distance due to your planet's volatile nature. Ta gestured to the cabin. May we speak inside? There are drones searching this area. Jin reluctantly led Tai inside, keeping his blaster ready. Hana immediately ran out from the back room, curious about the visitor. When she saw Tai, she stopped and tilted her head. Like Mama, she said, pointing to Ta's markings. Ta kneeled down to Hana's level, his expression softening. Yes, little one. Like your mama. He looked up at Jin. She is remarkable. A perfect blend of both species. Why did Nera leave? Jin demanded. Where is she now? Ta stood up. Nera was promised in marriage to General Hyun of the Crimson faction. It would have ended decades of civil war within our empire. When she fled to Earth, it was seen as a great insult. The Emperor searched for her for years. And now they've found her, Jin said, remembering her message. Yes, our detectors picked up energy signatures matching lumen biology on this planet. They found Nera first, but she managed to create a diversion. Ta's expression darkened. She allowed herself to be captured to give you time to hide the child. Jin felt his heart sink. Captured. Is she alive? Yes, but her situation is precarious. The Emperor doesn't yet know about Hana. Ta looked at the child, who was now examining his uniform with curious fingers. If he did, You must understand, Jin. Hybrids between lumen and other species are strictly forbidden. Why? Because of their potential. Ta gestured to Hana. Pure lumen have certain abilities, what you might call telepathy, energy manipulation, enhanced cognition. But hybrids, their abilities can exceed pure bloodlines in unpredictable ways. The ancient laws forbid such mixing to prevent the creation of beings whose powers might threaten imperial control. Jin moved protectively toward Hana. She's just a child who will grow into something neither human nor lumen has seen before. Ta pulled out a small device and showed Jin images of lumen script. These are the records Nera stole before fleeing. Research on the few hybrids born in our history. They developed abilities beyond anything we anticipated. Jin watched as Hana's blocks began to float slightly when she concentrated on them. What would they do to her? Best case, study her, control her. Worst case, eliminate the threat she represents. Tae's voice was grim. Both the Emperor's forces and General Hun's rebels want to find her. Each believes controlling such power would win them the war. And Nara, what happens to her? The Emperor may forgive his daughter eventually, but if he discovers she produced a hybrid child with a human. Ta didn't finish the sentence. Jin sat down heavily. So what do we do? Keep running forever? Not forever. I have a plan, but it will require time. Ta handed Jin a new device. This will shield Hana's energy signature from our scanners. It won't work forever, but it buys us months. Us. Yes. I was Nera's teacher before she fled. I helped her escape because I believe our empire's laws on hybrids are wrong, based on fear, not science. Ta looked at Hana with wonder. Your daughter could be the bridge between our worlds. A sudden alert flashed on Ta's wrist device. Imperial scouts. They're scanning this sector. He moved quickly to the window. We need to leave. Now. Jin grabbed their bags, already packed for quick departure. Where do we go? The outer colonies. Human settlements where lumen presence is minimal. Ta paused, looking serious. Jin, you should know. There are humans working with both Imperial and Rebel forces. Your own kind may betray you for the right price. As they hurried to Ta's vehicle, Jin saw distant lights in the sky, too many to be normal aircraft. The lumen were coming in force. Hana looked up at the lights, her golden-flecked eyes reflecting them. Pretty, she said. Jin held her close. Yes, but we need to go somewhere safer. To find Mama? Hana asked hopefully. Jin exchanged glances with Ta before answering. Yes, Hana. Someday we'll find Mama. As Ta's vehicle silently lifted off, hiding among the trees, Jin realized his life as a simple mechanic was gone forever. He was now a fugitive protecting perhaps the most important child in the galaxy, a child whose existence threatened an empire. 3 months had passed since Jin and Hana fled with Ta. They now lived on Colony 7, a remote mining outpost far from Earth. The colony was a maze of prefabricated buildings and underground tunnels, perfect for hiding among the thousands of workers who asked few questions about newcomers. Jin had found work as a mechanic in the lower levels, fixing the heavy mining equipment. His military background and technical skills made him valuable enough that no one looked too closely at his fake identification or the unusual child who sometimes accompanied him. Hand me the sonic wrench, Hana, Jin said as he worked beneath a massive drill. Hana, now approaching her 3rd birthday, picked up the tool without touching it. The wrench floated from the toolbox and drifted toward Jin's outstretched hand. Hana, Jin whispered urgently. Remember what we talked about. No floating things where others can see. The little girl pouted but nodded. Her abilities had grown stronger each week. What started as making small toys float had developed into moving heavier objects, sensing emotions, and occasionally knowing things she shouldn't. Sorry, Dada, she said, taking the wrench in her hand and physically passing it to him. Jin smiled at her. Despite everything, he felt immense pride watching her grow. Her blue markings had become more pronounced, but in the dim light of the colony, with a small cap covering her head, she could pass for human, at least from a distance. "Done for today," Jin announced, sliding out from under the machine. "Let's go get dinner." They walked through the crowded tunnels, Jin nodding to fellow workers while keeping Hannah close. They had developed a routine here, a semblance of normalcy amid their hidden life as fugitives. When they reached their small apartment, Jin immediately sensed something was wrong. The door was slightly ajar. "Hannah, stay behind me," he whispered, pulling out his blaster. They entered cautiously. Tai sat at their small table, his silver-blue skin looking paler than usual. "We've been compromised," Ta said without greeting. "Imperial scouts identified your energy signature during your shift today." Jin looked at Hannah. "But the shield device, her abilities are growing too strong for it," Tut explained. "We need to move again. Tonight." Jin began packing their emergency bags, a routine they had practiced many times. Where to this time? The desert settlements on Proxima. It's mostly automated mining operations, minimal population. Hannah sat on her bed, watching them prepare. "I'm tired of running," she said, her voice sounding older than her years. Jin and Tai exchanged worried glances. Hannah's mind was developing as rapidly as her abilities. "I know, sweetheart, but it's not safe here anymore," Jin explained gently. "Because I'm different," Hannah said. It wasn't a question. Before Jin could respond, an alarm blared through the colony speaker system. "Attention all residents. Security lockdown in progress. Unknown vessels have entered colony airspace. All civilians return to quarters immediately." Ta moved to the window. "They're here sooner than I expected. We need another way out." Jin pulled up the colony schematics on his portable screen. "There's a maintenance tunnel 3 levels down. It leads to the emergency shuttle bay." They moved quickly, Jin carrying Hannah through the increasingly panicked crowds. The colonists believed it was a pirate raid, a common enough occurrence in the outer colonies, but Jin knew better. As they descended toward the maintenance level, a group of security officers blocked their path. "Identification," demanded the lead officer. Jin prepared to fight their way through, but Hannah spoke first. "You don't need to see our identification," she said, her voice carrying a strange resonance. Her blue markings glowed faintly. "We're colony maintenance workers responding to the level 3 power fluctuation." The officer's eyes glazed slightly. "Maintenance workers? Yes, proceed to level 3. When they were past, Jin looked at his daughter in shock. "Hannah, how did you?" "Like when Mama would get the store man to give us extra treats," she said simply. "I just push my thoughts into their thoughts." Ta looked both impressed and concerned. Mind influence is rare even among pure lumen. She shouldn't be able to do that for years. They'd reached the maintenance tunnel, a narrow passage rarely used except by service droids. As they crawled through, Jin heard heavy footsteps and unfamiliar voices from a connecting passage. "Search every level." The hybrid signal was strongest in the residential section. The voice had the distinct accent of the Lumen military. Jin froze, holding Hannah close. Even her breathing seemed to pause. Then something unexpected happened. Hannah's eyes turned completely golden, her markings glowing bright blue in the darkness. She placed a small hand against the tunnel wall. "Hannah." "No," Ta whispered, but it was too late. A pulse of energy traveled from her fingers into the metal walls. Seconds later, the colony's power grid fluctuated, plunging sections into darkness while overloading others with power surges. Alarms blared as actual systems failed throughout the colony. "Now we can go," Hannah said calmly as her eyes returned to normal. "They can't see us in the dark." Jin and Tai stared at her in disbelief before continuing their escape. The chaos she had created provided perfect cover as they made their way to the shuttle bay. They had nearly reached the emergency shuttles when a new threat appeared, not Lumen soldiers, but human mercenaries. Their leader, a scared man with military bearing, pointed directly at them. "That's the hybrid. 5 million credits to whoever brings it alive." Jin pushed Hana behind him as 6 mercenaries advanced. His old combat training took over as he engaged the first 2, moving with a speed and precision that surprised even Ta. But they were outnumbered. A mercenary got past Jin's defense and reached for Hana. The little girl's markings flashed, and the man was thrown backward by an invisible force, crashing into his companions. "Into the shuttle," Ta shouted, firing his lumen weapon to cover their retreat. They piled into the small emergency craft. Jin's hands flew over the controls, his years as a marine pilot returning in an instant. The shuttle's engines roared to life. "They're coming," Hana said, looking toward the bay doors where more figures were appearing. These with the unmistakable silver-blue skin of lumen soldiers. The shuttle lifted off as weapon fire pinged against its hull. Jin pushed the engines beyond safety limits, and they burst from the colony bay into open space. "We need to jump to hyperspace immediately," Tai urged. "Without proper calculations, we could end up inside a star. We have no choice. Their ships will catch us in minutes." Jin looked back at Hana, who sat calmly watching the stars through the viewport. "I trust Dada," she said simply. Jin nodded and engaged the hyperdrive. The stars stretched into lines around them as the shuttle leaped into hyperspace, leaving their pursuers behind for now. As they traveled through the blue tunnel of hyperspace, Jin realized that their situation had fundamentally changed. It wasn't just about hiding anymore. The hunters now knew exactly what Hana was and what she could do. The stakes had just gotten much higher. Jin stood at the edge of the underground bunker, watching as 20 people trained with makeshift weapons. 6 months had passed since their narrow escape from Colony 7. They now hid in an abandoned mining facility on Earth's moon, converted into a base of operations. "Their form is improving," said Mina, a former Earth Special Forces soldier who had joined their cause after witnessing Hana's abilities firsthand. Jin nodded. "They need to be ready. The Lumen think humans are primitive, but they'll learn otherwise." What had begun as a desperate flight to protect his daughter had transformed into something larger. After several close encounters with both Lumen factions and human mercenaries, Jin had realized they couldn't keep running forever. They needed allies. Da, a brilliant engineer who had lost his family to Lumen scientific sampling, approached with a tablet. "The reverse-engineered shield generators are online. They should mask our entire facility from their sensors." "Good work," Jin said. Their greatest advantage was that the Lumen consistently underestimated human ingenuity. Using technology salvaged from crashed Lumen ships and Ta's knowledge, they had begun developing countermeasures. A small hand tugged at Jin's sleeve. Hana, now 3.5, looked up at him with eyes that seemed older than her years. "Dada, Ta wants to show you something," she said. Her speech was now perfect, her mind developing far faster than a human child's. Jin followed Hana to the lab where Ta worked. The Lumen scientist had become their most valuable ally, risking everything by defecting completely from his people. "Jin, look at this," Ta said, pointing to readings on a screen. "We've decoded more of Nera's stolen research. It confirms what I suspected about Hana's abilities." The screen showed complex genetic mappings, comparing Lumen, human, and Hana's unique hybrid DNA. The combination of Lumen energy manipulation and human adaptability has created something entirely new, Ta explained. "Lumen abilities are fixed. We can only use energy in ways determined by our genetic lineage. But humans have extraordinary neuroplasticity. Hana has inherited both." "Meaning what?" Jin asked, though he already suspected the answer. "She can learn any Lumen ability she observes, then adapt it in ways pure Lumen cannot." Ta looked at Hana with wonder. "That's why both Imperial and Crimson factions want her so badly. She represents evolution." Hana had wandered to a workbench where Mina was disassembling the Lumen energy weapon. The child watched intently as Mina struggled to understand its components. "It's backwards," Hana said suddenly. Mina looked up. "What do you mean?" "The energy doesn't flow from the power cell to the emitter. It flows from outside, through the lens, then the emitter shapes it. Hannah pointed to various parts as she spoke. Like this. She touched the weapon, and to everyone's surprise, it hummed to life, glowing with a soft blue light. "That's impossible," Ta whispered. "She shouldn't understand lumen quantum principles." Jin smiled proudly. "She's been watching you work for months. She learns everything." A sudden alarm blared through the facility. Day rushed in. "Lumen ships. At least 3 cruisers just came through the dark side of the moon. They found us." Jin's mind raced. Their facility wasn't ready for a full assault. How long until they're in range? 20 minutes, maybe less. Jin turned to Ta. "Is the prototype ready?" Ta hesitated. "It's untested, but theoretically functional. It's our only chance." Jin kneeled before Hannah. "Sweetheart, remember the special room we showed you? With the games and books. I need you to go there now." Hannah's expression became serious. "They're coming for me again." "Yes, but this time we're not running. We're making a stand." As Mina took Hannah to the secure room deep within the facility, Jin gathered his leaders. Besides Ta, Dai, and Mina, they had been joined by Yu, a communications expert, and Suk, a doctor who shared a name with the Lumen Emperor, but had much more compassion. The moment they land, they'll realize their sensors are being blocked. "They'll send ground forces," Jin explained. "That's when we spring the trap." The minutes ticked by tensely. Through the facility's cameras, they watched as 3 massive Lumen ships descended to the lunar surface, their sleek designs gleaming in the sunlight. "They're deploying troops," Yu reported. "I count 40 soldiers. Standard formation." Jin nodded to Da. "Activate the prototype." Dad pressed a sequence on his tablet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, throughout the facility, salvaged Lumen technology began to hum. The lights flickered as power redirected to the experimental defense system. Outside, the advancing Lumen soldiers suddenly stopped. Their weapons and communication devices went dead in their hands. The ships hovering above similarly lost power, dropping the final few meters to the surface with heavy thuds. "It worked," Dad exclaimed. "The energy disruption field is functioning." Jin allowed himself a brief smile. Using Nera's research and Tai's knowledge, they had created a field that disrupted the specific energy frequencies Lumen technology relied on. "Phase 2, Jin ordered. Their small but determined force emerged from hidden entrances surrounding the confused Lumen soldiers. The aliens, accustomed to technological superiority, found themselves facing humans armed with primitive but effective weapons. "In the name of Emperor Suk, surrender the hybrid child," demanded the Lumen commander. Jin stepped forward. "I have a counteroffer. Return to your ships, leave Earth's solar system, and we won't destroy your entire fleet." The commander laughed. "You are primitive beings. Once our reinforcements arrive." "Your reinforcements won't receive your signal," Jin interrupted. "And even if they did, they'd face the same technology failure you're experiencing now." To demonstrate, he nodded to Da, who increased the disruption field's power. The Lumen soldiers' armor, which enhanced their natural abilities, sparked and shut down completely. For the first time, uncertainty showed on the commander's face. "How is this possible? Human technology cannot interfere with Lumen systems." "You're right," Jin agreed. "But we're not using human technology. We've adapted your own against you." The commander stared in disbelief. "No human could understand our systems well enough to." His eyes widened in realization. "The hybrid. You're using the hybrid's abilities." Jin didn't correct him. Let them believe it was all Hana, rather than human ingenuity combined with Ta's knowledge. "Leave now," Jin said firmly, "and tell your emperor that Earth is under protection. Any further incursions will be met with increasingly severe responses." The commander looked at his disabled troops, then at the determined humans surrounding them. For the first time in the long history of the Lumen Empire, their forces were retreating before what they had considered an inferior species. As the Lumen returned to their ships, Jin knew this was just the beginning. The Empire would return with greater numbers and new strategies. But today marked a turning point, the day humanity proved itself worthy of standing among the stars. And somewhere in the facility behind him, a little girl with blue markings and golden-flecked eyes watched through security cameras, understanding more than anyone realized about the role she would play in the future of two civilizations. The massive view screen in Earth's United Defense Command showed hundreds of Lumen ships entering the solar system. 2 years had passed since the lunar standoff, and both Imperial and Crimson faction forces had finally arrived in full strength, expecting to claim Earth and Hana in one decisive strike. Jin stood at the center of the command room, surrounded by military leaders from all Earth nations. What had begun as his personal struggle to protect his daughter had evolved into humanity's fight for survival and recognition. "They've split into 2 battle groups," reported Yu, now the head of Earth's communications network. Imperial forces approaching from the north, Ecliptic, Crimson faction from the south. Hana, now 5 years old, sat quietly in a special chair designed to enhance her unique abilities. Her blue markings glowed softly as she concentrated on the tactical display. "The Emperor leads the Northern Fleet himself," she said, her voice calm despite the pressure. "He wants to capture me alive. General Hun commands the Southern Fleet. He would rather destroy me than let the Emperor have me." Jin nodded. Hana's telepathic abilities had grown strong enough to sense intentions across vast distances. She had become their most valuable intelligence asset, though Jin struggled daily with the burden this placed on his young daughter. "All defense platforms report ready," Minna announced from her station. In the 2 years since their first encounter with the Lumen, humanity had prepared extensively. Using reverse-engineered Lumen technology combined with human innovation, they had built a defense network throughout the solar system. "Begin Phase 1, Jin ordered. Day activated the first layer of defenses. Hundreds of small satellites, previously invisible to Lumen sensors, powered up across the solar system. They began broadcasting the improved energy disruption field that had worked on the Moon, but the Lumen ships pushed through. "They've adapted their shields," Tay observed. The Lumen scientist had become Earth's most trusted advisor on alien technology, just as we expected. Jin wasn't surprised. "Proceed to Phase 2. Throughout the solar system, larger defense platforms emerged from hiding places in asteroid belts and planetary rings. They fired concentrated beams of energy at specific frequencies, targeting weaknesses in Lumen ship design that only Ta could have identified. Several enemy ships faltered, their engines disrupted, but the majority pressed forward. "They'll reach Earth orbit in 17 minutes, he reported. Jin looked at Hana. "Are you ready?" The little girl nodded. "I can feel them all, Dada. They're angry and afraid. Afraid of us. Of what I represent," Hana said with wisdom beyond her years. "Change always brings fear." Jin squeezed her hand, then turned to address the command room. "This is what we planned for. Humanity stands together today, not just for Earth, but for our right to exist as equals in the galaxy." As the Lumen fleets approached Earth, they encountered the third layer of defense, a network of human-piloted fighters using hybrid technology. The smaller ships darted between the massive Lumen cruisers, exploiting weaknesses that pure Lumen thinking had never addressed. On the view screen, Jin watched as the Imperial and Crimson fleets began firing on each other as well as Earth's defenders. Their ancient civil war continued even now. "Emperor Suk is hailing us," Yu announced. The screen shifted to show a regal Lumen male with elaborate blue markings. His resemblance to Nera was striking. "Humans," the Emperor said, his tone imperious. "You have sheltered a fugitive of the Empire and created an abomination that threatens the natural order. Surrender the hybrid child, and we may yet show mercy to your world." Jin stepped forward. "Emperor Suk, Earth recognizes neither your authority nor your definition of abomination. We propose an alternative. Recognize humanity as equals, withdraw your forces, and we can discuss peaceful coexistence." The Emperor's expression hardened. You are not equals. Your technology is stolen, your understanding limited. Even now, you survive only because of our internal conflicts and the aberration you protect. As they spoke, the space battle intensified. Several Earth defense platforms fell to concentrated lumen fire, while human fighters continued to harass the larger ships. Final defensive measure, Jin ordered quietly. Day nodded and activated the system they had spent the last year developing in secret. Throughout Earth's magnetosphere, specially designed emitters began creating a field that Ta had theorized could affect lumen biology directly. On the screen, the Emperor suddenly looked uncomfortable. Other lumen officers visible behind him showed similar distress. What is this? The Emperor demanded, his markings flickering erratically. A demonstration, Jin replied. Just as you underestimated human adaptability, you've underestimated your own daughter's foresight. Nara left us more than just her research. She left us the means to defend ourselves against lumen physiology itself. Hannah stood and approached the screen. Grandfather, she said clearly, addressing the Emperor directly. The command room fell silent. Few had known of Nara's royal lineage. You are not my blood, the Emperor responded, though his voice lacked conviction. I am more than blood, Hannah said. I am possibility. She raised her small hands, and her markings blazed with blue light. Throughout the command center, technology responded to her presence. The defensive field in Earth's magnetosphere strengthened, causing more visible discomfort among the lumen. What you fear isn't that I'll destroy the Empire, Hannah continued. You fear I'll change it. You fear your people will see there are other ways to be. A new alert sounded. A third fleet had appeared at the edge of the solar system. More lumen ships? Jin asked in alarm. Tai checked the readings and looked up in shock. No, those are civilian vessels. Hundreds of them. The Emperor's expression changed to one of shock. Impossible. On a secondary screen, they watched as the civilian lumen fleet positioned itself between Earth and the military vessels. A new voice came through the communication system. This is Administrator Key of the Lumen Cultural Exchange. We stand with Earth and the hybrid child. The old ways must end. The Emperor's face contorted with rage. Traitors. The hybrid has corrupted your minds. No, Father, came a new voice. The command room doors opened, and Nara walked in, flanked by Mina and a security team. Jin stared in disbelief. Nara. She moved to his side, touching his face gently before embracing Hannah, who clung to her mother with tears streaming down her face. We found her in a secret Imperial facility 3 weeks ago, Mina explained quietly. We kept it classified until we confirmed her identity. Nara turned to the screen, facing her father. The corruption is the fear that has ruled our people for millennia. Humans have shown us what we've forgotten. That adaptation is strength, not weakness. The Emperor's ships had stopped advancing, caught between the rebel Crimson faction, Earth's defenses, and now their own civilian population. This changes nothing, the Emperor insisted, though his voice held less certainty. It changes everything, Jin said, stepping forward with Nara and Hannah. Today, humanity proves we belong among the stars. Not as subjects, but as equals. You have a choice, Emperor, a costly war against 3 forces, or a new beginning. As the Emperor considered his options, Hannah looked up at her parents, her unique eyes, part human, part lumen, reflecting the stars on the view screen. We win, don't we? She whispered. Jin and Nara exchanged glances, their hands joining over their daughter's shoulders. Yes, Jin said softly. Today, humanity triumphs not through destruction, but by showing the strength that comes from embracing difference. On the screen, the Emperor gave the signal to stand down. A new chapter in galactic history had begun.